I've trained pastors in the skills of interpreting texts. And it's very clear they're not stories about gods. They're stories about the powerful ones in the Bible and the sky people, the Anunnaki, in the Sumerian tablets.
The Elohim and Yahweh stories of the Bible are based on ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian, and Akkadian narratives of Dingir and Anunnaki, figures which today we would describe as ETs. But are there references to ETs and contact experiences in the New Testament? I think if you're looking for that, there are probably 5 places you would go. The Annunciation, that's the story of when Mary, the mother of Jesus, is told she's going to have a baby by some unusual means. The second would be the Epiphany. That's the story of when the Magi, the wise men, come from the east to pay homage to the infant Jesus. The third would be the Ascension narrative. That's the story in Luke Acts of when Jesus is taken up into the sky and into the clouds after his death and resurrection. The fourth would be the Apostle Paul's vision, which is described in 2 Corinthians 12. And the fifth would be a very interesting moment in the book of the Revelation of John. Now, the Annunciation is a very interesting moment in the Gospel of Luke, at which his mother, Mary, who is a virgin, she's never had sex with any man, although she's betrothed to Joseph, has a close encounter with a being described as an angel. And she's told she's going to have a baby, even though by any natural explanation, that is impossible. And of course, she does have a baby who turns out to be very famous, Jesus. Now, Christians tell this as a unique story to illustrate the uniqueness of Jesus. But even within the Gospels, it is not a unique story. The story begins with a close encounter and it results in an anomalous pregnancy. We think we've been told what kind of being she has encountered. It's an angel. But that word just means a messenger or a person on assignment, a person on a mission. It hasn't told us the biology or genus of the being who's delivering the message. So it really is a close encounter with a non-human figure. But it's not even unique within the gospel. Almost exactly the same thing happened to Mary's cousin Elizabeth. She also is not going to have a child by natural means because she's post-menopause. And then she has a close encounter with a non-human being, and now she's pregnant also with somebody very important. So these two stories are very clearly and deliberately paralleled in the Gospel of Luke. We're supposed to notice it's virtually the same story. And it's a story of something that at that time would have been described as a supernatural pregnancy, although today we might have other language for it. But I'll come to that later. Those two stories are clearly modeled on the story of Abraham and Sarah and their anomalous pregnancy, because Sarah is post-menopause. In the Hebrew canon, Abraham and Sarah are presented to us as a story of Hebrew origins. But I argue in my book, The Scars of Eden, that we actually have a story of at least 2 layers. Yes, there is a Hebrew origins story there, but it's interwoven with a human origins story as well. But it's the same basic pattern. Here's a couple. They're not going to have children by any natural means. And then they have a close encounter with 3 powerful non-human entities, and the anomalous pregnancy follows, and it is a new beginning in the story of humanity in the Hebrew canon. So we have 3 figures in the Bible whose conception and arrival is announced in very similar fashion. But these stories are not unique to the Judeo-Christian tradition. If you listen to the stories of the birth of Lao Tzu it too is an anomalous conception. It's there in the conception story of Vipassi Buddha, the 22nd incarnation of the Buddha before Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. It is also there in the conception narrative of the Yellow Emperor. Now, what's interesting about some of these Eastern stories is that we're given a different description of the contact phenomenon that preceded the anomalous pregnancy. It was a phenomenon of light being shone onto the mother from something in the sky. I find it curious that Carlo Crivelli in the Renaissance period depicted the Annunciation in exactly that way. There is the beam of light shining onto Mary from, well, what is that in the sky? A flying saucer, a UFO at the very least. Why would Carlo Crivelli tell the story of the Annunciation that way? It's nothing like how it's described in the Gospel of Luke. He's painted it the way it's described in these stories about Lao Tzu, the Yellow Emperor, the Vipassi Buddha. The story of an anomalous conception in which the mother is human and the father is God is actually an echo of a pre-Christian story, the story of the conception of Alexander.